Welcome to the Sustainable Clinical Medicine Podcast. I am your host, Sarah Smith. I am a practicing rural family physician and the charting coach. This is the podcast for physicians and advanced practice providers who are ready to step back from the busyness of their clinical day to share ideas, question everything, and redesign their clinical day. We are redesigning clinical medicine to create sustainable clinical days and create time for our lives outside of medicine. Join us for discussions with world experts who are helping design sustainable models of clinical medicine and the physicians or clinicians who have discovered or designed sustainable models of clinical medicine for themselves. Welcome back, everybody, and thank you so much for those of you who have taken advantage of October being birthday month for Charting Champions and have joined in so that we can do that amazing charting after every patient workshop together in November. So I'm very excited to meet all the newbies. Today we have special guest, Dr. Ali Novitsky, who is coming to talk to us about sustainable medicine her way and the things that she teaches her physicians who come into her world as well. So welcome. I'll let you introduce yourself.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I love your work. I see kind of the work you put out into the world and so many physicians that are benefiting from it. So thank you for all that you do. So I'm Ali Novitsky, as you mentioned, and I'm a neonatologist. Well, back in the day, I was a neonatologist, and it was really, really amazing and such a passion of mine. And then as kind of things grew and I had two kids of my own, I just realized that, what I was doing with neonatology, working 24-hour shifts and whatnot, just really became kind of more unsustainable for really the mother, kind of that balance I was looking for. And so it kind of really prompted me to kind of dig into my passions, which has always been health. And so through the years, I've been able to create health programs for physicians so that they can focus on their own optimal health. So then I become obesity medicine board certified, and I focus a lot just on optimal health, kind of not a one size fits all, more of a body positive approach. And that's the work I put out into the world right now that helps physicians stay in medicine because they're prioritizing their own health.
Yeah, we love to talk about priorities and reminding ourselves that we're both human and physician or clinician, so that it's not just work consuming all of our lives. And like you said, it was really the bringing in of children that created the impetus for change for you. Tell us about your journey through medicine. How was that?
Yeah, thank you. That's so fun. So, I kind of had an interesting start. My father, who is 76. So he's still in practice. So he is a country doctor. So if you can imagine Doc Hollywood, the doctor that makes house calls and has his office in our home. So we grew up, I have two brothers, and we grew up with a doctor's office in our home. And so the three of us actually did go into medicine because that's really, it was more of our trade. If you think of it that way, when I was 13, I would help my dad in the office. Like I'd assist him if he needed a patient to be kind of supported or, I can remember he was doing stitches, and I was helping him hold the leg, so it really was just kind of natural that we did it and we wanted to. And so when I went to medical school knowing that I wanted to be a doctor from the time I was in kindergarten. And I knew once I got there that I didn't want to do surgery. I knew that I wanted to focus more on kids. And then just kind of the excitement of an intensive care situation really led me to neonatology. And I really found my home there. And I really loved becoming a neonatologist and everything that it entailed. And then, as I mentioned, I was about right out of fellowship, and I had my first child right out of fellowship. And I knew then that still neonatology, the 24-hour in-house shifts, was sustainable at that point. However, I looked down the road 10 years and I thought, I love medicine. I love health. I don't know that I can sleep. It was kind of like these 24-hour shifts that I really was being realistic with myself. Do I see myself, doing this for a really, really long time. And so during that time, I got pregnant again, second baby. And what happened was I shifted jobs and I took a job that was more clinically based. So it was, my first job was a little more academic clinical, and then this one was pure clinical. So it allowed me to do more shift work, which was really, really great. But what happened was my husband is also a physician. So he's a psychiatrist, a child and adolescent psychiatrist. He was working 5 jobs. So we had like 2 nannies, 3 babysitters, relatives that were helping, and it just became really unbearable. And so what happened was I got offered this position with a company, Optum Health, to be a neonatal, essentially a neonatal provider, where I was reviewing cases, but I wasn't actually touching the patient.
Mm-hmm.
And at first I had a real hard time with this. I said, no, there's no way I'm leaving clinical medicine. I can't do this. This is selling out. I had all this talk, right? And my husband looked at me and said, well, if you don't sign the contract, I will, because I wanted the job. Like I did want the job. It was routine hours. It was still, I needed to have my skill level to do the job. It was higher pay, set hours, no weekends or holidays. So I wound up taking the job, and I maintained my clinical practice kind of per diem. So I was doing like full-time momhood, full-time new job with Optum Health, and then I was sprinkling in some moonlighting.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, I said, okay, this is great. This is a great transition. However, I looked 10 years down the road and I didn't see myself sitting at a desk reviewing cases.
Mm-hmm.
And this is when I went to a women wellness conference led by Kathy Stepien, actually, and I learned about physician coaching. And that was in 2017. And I was just completely swept away in the idea that I could help women physicians kind of create the program that I needed to stay in medicine. And so that's where it kind of all started. And then my transition kind of titrated, medicine started titrating down as my business started titrating up. So it was more of a titration process. However, for me, it's very important that I do serve medicine. And so this is why I have a really high propensity to take care of a lot of women physicians.
Got it. Yeah. So interesting. So it sounds like you had a team of people helping you.
Yes.
It sounds also like you were in tune with how you were handling the balance of family obligations and work obligations. Was it messier than that? Or do you think you kind of understood what your limitations were?
No, it was messy. Very messy.
Messy.
Oh, it was a hot mess. Oh, it was terrible. So I had postpartum depression with the first baby, and I had a horrible time breastfeeding. I couldn't produce enough. And so I had this terrible shame. I was the only neonatologist that wasn't like breastfeeding her kid. And so it was this whole big thing. And my mother-in-law really kind of swooped in and was like, this is nonsense. Like, just break out the formula. Like, what are you doing? This is nonsense. And so I think believe it or not, that postpartum depression was a turning point for me, because I realized that I had just pushed myself to the max emotionally, physically, mentally, and nothing was cohesive. It seemed like I was playing all these different roles, but nothing made sense. It was just all these different roles that were not connected. And really, my marriage stayed stable because we're really friends first. However, there was really no extra attention being put into the marriage. And so when I think about it, I love your question. I looked at my dad growing up as a role model, and he provided for a traditional role, kind of like he provided for the family. He did the job. My mom, while very well educated, she's a psychologist, reared the kids. She was really in there doing all the kid things. So I was quite confused because I was like, well, I want to provide and I want a mother. Mm-hmm. I didn't have a role model to show me how to do that at that time. And so I think it's really interesting because then I decided, well, maybe I can become that role model for future women. How can I, and I realized what had to happen is I had to be completely all in passionate about my work so I could fill my cup that way. And then in return, be able to have kind of some time to fill my cup in that motherhood role. Cause it's funny, whenever I do my astrology, I'm Cancer, 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 Cancer. So I'm very maternal. And so that is a pull for me. So that maternal end is very strong. And then also the ability to put good work into the world, that's really strong. And so just trying to kind of put the two together, but it was a total hot mess. I've had many therapists, I've had many coaches, I've had many people supporting me. And I'll tell you what, I'm just starting to come out the other end.
Interesting. Okay, that's very, it puts it back in perspective because I know that this is probably the first time I've seen you sit still ever.
Probably.
Ellie's normally moving because you'll be doing, I love all of the little reels that you put out where you're just in the supermarket and you're doing some squats or something. Like this is helping us figure out how to kind of get our health priority even when we're crazy busy and doing things like shopping with the kids or doing work. So when you're in that, go back to the 24-hour shift for a sec. Were you still in that health then? Like, how did you maintain health within a 24-hour shift? Was that part of it, or did you get enough activity during the shift? Like, what did that look like for you back then?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I will tell you that during the time that I was doing the 24-hour shifts, which I will say, we did do them in residency, but really my fellowship is when that kind of beefed up and then into attendinghood, if you will. I was getting up at 4 a.m. to go to the 5 a.m. CrossFit class.
Mm-hmm.
So I was lacking sleep significantly.
Mm-hmm.
I literally was doing the physical work. I was not doing the mental work. I was not doing the emotional work. Granted, you could consider the physical activity was a form of emotional processing. Fine. Yes. Regulating and grounding. It was doing that for me. I was exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
So I will say yes, but at a cost.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I love your next part of the question, because what I found is that I was pushing myself so hard and it was unnecessary. And I later kind of figured out that less is way more. And so then I started creating things like on-call workouts where you actually get your steps and you get kind of some movement in while you're working. It's totally possible. So if I were doing the 24s right now, and by the way, I really feel so passionate about that career in neonatology. Now, the 24-hour shifts were very hard for me personally, mentally, emotionally, physically. Yes. And I know that a lot of people still do them and it may work. So I just like to give the perspective of, for me, like how it was kind of really negatively like impacting mostly, I would say, my emotional and my mental health more than anything. Like physically, I was kind of still plugging along. But the idea is that, yes, you can absolutely, if you are working these 24-hour shifts, you can just move when you're at work. Why not hit two birds with one stone, right? So yes, that is my new mantra. It's, get your steps, and the steps really matter. And then it's, what, do 3 sets of 10 air squats. That's strength training. Call it a day. There's your routine right there.
Perfect. So it's kind of fitting that priority in with the things that are happening anyway, which sounds a lot more sustainable than getting up early for your 24-hour shift, which sounds terrible.
It was terrible. And I look back, I'm like, how now if I wake up at 4 a.m. because I have to use the bathroom, I'm like, how was I getting up to work out at this time? This is no, this is a lot, a lot.
Who was noticing Ali getting exhausted physically? Who do you think that was? Any particular people stand out as the notices of what was going on for you?
When I was like
Exhausted.
when I was exhausted. Oh
Yeah.
gosh, yeah. So I guess for me, the exhaustion, sometimes I don't notice because I'm used to just keeping such a fast pace. But back in the day, what I can tell you is I was just very not present. I was distracting like crazy. So, I mean, that's really where I think my phone usage probably shot up like 5,000%. So I just was disengaged with my life. I didn't want to be in my life. I wanted to be everywhere other than in my life because it was just too hard to slow down, to realize that if I, slow down, gosh, will I be able to pick up the momentum again? It was just so fast that I had to stay fast all the time, which really kind of pushed me away from feeling any of my feelings, right? I was just go, go, go. And then when my husband literally said, I'll sign the contract if you don't, he recognized that I was not doing so great.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So that's 2 kids later.
2 kids later.
So that's a long time to have been in that busyness.
Yes. Yes.
Mm-hmm. I think, like you said, the physical movement is a form of grounding and burnout prevention. We see that nearly half of the people who are expressing burnout use exercise as some way to offset it. It sounds like the extreme, though, was the problem.
Yeah, I think I just wasn't aware because at that point, when I was in clinical medicine, I mean, there were no coaching programs when we were residents. Like there was no, really any talk about taking care of your mental health, your emotional health, your physical health. I was still in that realm of, oh, okay, to be healthy physically, right, we have to do X, Y, and Z every week. And, I was an athlete in college, so I kind of had that work ethic of the working out. So for me, it just really was a very well established portion of my life. But I didn't think about it in any other way. And so I just don't think I had the insight at that point. It wasn't until I really developed my business and I started really incorporating movement and exercise into what I was doing with coaching. And what I realized, this is where the shift happened for me. What I realized is when I worked out with people right before we would go into coaching, we got way further because they became so much more regulated. So in other words, instead of their thoughts spiraling and we really couldn't get behind what the actual issue was, when we were able to kind of ground them and lower their stress level to come into actually talking it through, they had so much more awareness. And so the idea is just kind of really dropping all of that stress so we can become aware, we can slow down and become aware. And that's what I was lacking. I just wasn't aware. And so it was my own journey of becoming a coach that allowed me to kind of turn the tools on myself and say, yeah, and if you're going to teach this, you got to walk the walk. And so I started my own kind of journey. A lot of people, when they go into coaching, I think they think that they just become a coach and then they have to just do it and help people. And what the first thing I did when I was becoming a coach is I hired my own coach, because I knew that I wasn't up to speed with what I was already wanting to teach. I wasn't walking that. So it just really helped me to implement for myself so that I could really speak to it, I think, more authentically.
Yeah. What are you noticing about the physicians in your circle when they kind of arrive to you hot messes? What does that look like in terms of a transition?
So it's really interesting because I think a lot of the draw when physicians first start to come to work with me, the draw is the physical aspect. They kind of see, oh, well, it looks like we're going to really be optimizing our body composition, and it looks like we're going to really be optimizing our physical health. So that's typically like what I would say would be kind of how I stand out a little bit, because that is a huge part of what I do.
Mm-hmm.
And then they get in and they're like, oh, we have to work on our thoughts. Okay. So so usually what I see is like a gung-ho excitement into like, okay, I'm ready to be my fittest ever. I'm ready to do this. Let's go authentic and let's honor who we are, like in our own body. And then there's this like little period of, okay, I realized that I came for this reason and now I have a different goal. And so that's, so somebody brand new to me, that's a lot of what I see. It's like, okay, yes, let's do this. And oh my goodness, there's also the mental, the emotional, the energetic piece. And so I think it's an aha moment, to be quite honest. It's a huge awareness that happens, which slows the initial momentum of let's go all in on getting all the workouts in, to like, okay, let's talk sustainability here. Let's talk long game strategy. And so what I'd say is that they don't come in a hot mess. They actually come in pretty motivated, because think about it. When you're going to do a health program, you're usually in a pretty decent space. You're not so, like yes, I deal with burnout, but I'm not getting people that are so incredibly burned out. No, I'm getting people that are like, okay, yeah, I'm pretty good. Let's go all in, which is great, because then they come in and it's a little bit of a, oh, wow. And then we can go all in. So I would say for me, I'm actually really excited about what I get to do, because it's this, I get to see a lot of ahas pretty quickly. And then I see the discomfort. So then kind of how I program things is I'm prepared for that. And then I just kind of program everything so that we work through the discomfort of it. And so, yeah, I would say that, like I said, it was kind of a big learning curve for me, because initially when I first started, I just kind of expected that people coming in wouldn't have that like pause and then awareness. I thought it would just be kind of this like more upward trajectory. But that was 7 years ago. And now I smartened up a bit. And now I realized, what it is. So.
Yeah. So when I'm working with physicians and clinicians, they're in the state of not enough time scarcity, because they're kind of running at the extreme of, I can't get on top of this. I can't get the work done. I've got no time for anything else. Since some of them haven't exercised in years, they're really just that work takes everything, and then what's left is given to the family and the kids. Where do you see health fitting in? Like, how do people start to prioritize that little piece in amongst the busy?
I love this question. It's so good. So, and I think that what we have to realize is what's reality. And so a lot of times when people, right, they want to focus on their physical health, they're on Instagram and they see the most unrealistic examples of what fitness is supposed to be. And that's just not realistic. That is literally not even realistic for the people that are probably posting those things on Instagram. And so what I like to say is that, okay, so what is the goal for the movement? What is goal for physical activity, right? Because if somebody comes to me and they say, I want to live longer, I want to have longevity, versus somebody that says, I want to lose body fat, versus somebody that says, I want to gain muscle mass, versus somebody that says, I want to improve my fitness significantly, it's a whole range of where we start. So I would say, let's start with somebody comes in, they say, listen, I just want to optimize what I can optimize given the time constrictions that I have. So I'm going to be very realistic about what's possible. Well, with time restriction, we can improve your longevity. And so I like to go with the heavy hitters on what's going to do that. And so the biggest thing that's going to do that is to honestly get some steps in. We know that exercise is so important for preventing so many different chronic illnesses. So I always start with steps. And usually what I say is, you know what, get a pedometer, or get your Apple Watch, or get some way to track. And I say, I don't care if you're doing 500 steps a day. This is the data that I do care about. I don't care what you weigh, but tell me what your steps are. And so my goal typically is to get people out of the sedentary range. So sedentary is less than 5,000 steps a day. So my goal is to get individuals above 5,000 steps. We know that when we're above 5,000 steps, our longevity improves significantly. There's a lot of studies out there right now. So I always start with your steps. It's not extra cardio. It's not feeling bad about the Peloton bike that you haven't used in a while. It's literally, how many steps are you getting and can we get to 5,000? So that's goal number one. I don't even go past that point until people are consistently at the 5,000 step mark. The next piece that I always put in is I say, listen, so as we age, once we hit 30, we're losing muscle mass. We can't avoid it. And a lot of times what happens is we blame menopause or we blame aging. And really what's happening is we're just losing a whole lot of skeletal muscle. And that makes our basal metabolic rate goes down. And then essentially we're going to have less calorie burn. So if you lose 1 pound of muscle, you could gain between 5 to even 10 pounds of body fat in a year. And that's like with 1 pound of muscle lost. So my point is, it's not that we have to gain muscle, but we need to work on preserving muscle mass. So this is where I like to say, moving your body against resistance, starting at 20 minutes once a week. It can look like anything. It literally can be that you stand and, like I said, you do some air squats, you learn how to do a proper push-up and you do a few push-ups. You don't even have to have equipment. In fact, a lot of the workouts I lead have zero equipment. All the workouts I do at conferences, zero equipment. And so the idea is getting comfortable with what it means to move your body against resistance. It can be stretching even, it can be yoga. And so I would say above 5,000 steps and finding 20 minutes once a week to kind of move your body, because exercise, I will tell you, in my opinion, and what I promote, it's proactive and it's empowering. It's going to help emotionally regulate you. It's going to help you access your better thoughts. And it's going to actually improve your longevity. So that's where I start. And then when people say, okay, I got that down, now I'd like to work on my fitness. Well, then my recommendation is going to be a little bit different, but I'll tell you, even my most active people in my programs are strength training 3 times a week for 30 minutes. That is all we do. That is all we do. And they get results. And so my whole strategy is work smarter, not harder. And so yes, the programming is strategic to do that. However, it's nothing like groundbreaking. It's nothing that you've not seen before. It's literally just a sequence of movements we put together. We do it in 30 minutes and we do different routines 3 times a week, and that's it. And so my point is that you don't need a lot of time. Steps is most important.
Got it. Okay. I think we've got some good ideas there, because you've made it easy, attainable, worthwhile, and with good long-term importance, right? So just that 20 minutes that once a week, and we're going to help maintain skeletal muscle. I think that's a really important rule of thumb out there. Thank you.
Yeah,
Love that.
for your clients with charting, right? I recommend standing desk, getting a Bosu ball. Like when I used to work for Optum Health, I had a Bosu ball and I would stand at my standing desk on the Bosu ball. And so it helps with course. That's strength training. I mean, it really is. So just, there are some things you can do even while you are working.
That's interesting. So we like to keep work at work. Not all places will have standing desks, unfortunately. However, a lot of people are on their laptop, so there is a possibility of changing position or changing location just because you've got a portable device.
Yeah, that's great. It's, you know, just to mix it up a little bit, just to kind of give it a different, right? No, I totally agree. Don't bring the work home. But if you have the ability to stand while you're at work, try it.
Yeah, got it. What else about your physicians? Anything else that they're doing to create a sustainable day for themselves? Like, how are we starting to recognize the priority setting and that sort of thing? Yeah.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that, you know, high achieving, right? High achieving individuals, right? So I usually say, whatever you plan to do, decrease that by 20% today. And so I think the biggest thing is really setting realistic expectations. And also giving ourselves time to actually implement things for change. I think that we think we need to do so much more and we need to do it in such a short amount of time. So all that happens is overwhelm anyway. So I really focus on helping people set themselves up for success by setting very, very small, achievable goals. So we don't even start necessarily with 20 minutes once a week. Some people I have right now at 10 minutes. We're going to work out for 10 minutes once a week. And you know, obviously steps first and then that. But the idea is that it has to be a realistic goal. We have to give ourselves more time. So it's decreasing the goal by at least 20% and increasing the amount of time to implement, not achieve the goal, by about 20%. And the other thing too that's really interesting is that to stop mirroring the result. We marry the result all the time. We're like, oh, well, when I achieve, like, for example, you know, a lot of my clients are working on body composition, right? And a lot of them are trying to gain muscle mass. I mean, it's a beautiful movement. I mean, I have women that are coming in saying, I want to take up more space, is what they're telling me. Well, for somebody like our age, right? So let's just say, you know, 40 to 60 age range, to gain muscle in 1 year, the max we could probably gain is maybe 6 pounds. So it's a long haul. And so I think the idea is that if we're marrying the result, like, okay, I have to see this 6 pounds of muscle, I have to see this, we forget about the journey. And then we're not enjoying the journey. It's kind of what I described when I was not in my own life. I was completely out of my own life. I was so result driven versus let's be here now. And that, I think, is the shift. And so that's what a lot of my women are definitely working on, which is kind of interesting because I mentioned they come in, they're like, okay, this is my fittest year yet. And then they're like, and that's not the goal right now. The goal is I want to get into my own life. And a lot of times when we've not worked on emotional regulation, we're not willing to get in our own life because it's too painful.
Yeah. Got it. You mentioned grounding activities as exercise is one of those. Is that something that you've further expanded for yourself and for your people?
Absolutely. One of the reasons why I really decreased the amount of time with the workouts is because, like I mentioned, you know, we do a lot of full body work, but we also incorporate a lot of breathing. So actually breath work through I would say, so we do strength training with breath work now, and then we do a mindset component as we're moving. And so with those three strategies, the breathing, kind of like actually physically moving your body, grounding your feet into the earth, is a huge, and I work out, for example, with no shoes on for that purpose. So it's really to really feel grounded. And then combining that with the breath, we really can get into a more present state. And so I would say the way the programs have evolved is that we are doing less so that we enjoy it more and we're more likely to be consistent with it. Because when I used to give people, I mean, they literally were getting 5 hours of workouts a week on top of like all of the other mindset coaching, and on top of, it was way too much. So I had to really kind of look at that and say, okay, I'm playing into the more is more, but really less is more. And so that's really shifted for me. And what I found is that when we're not throwing a lot of circumstances that are potentially overwhelming, right? Because there's a lot of it. And as perfectionists and overachievers, we want to check the box and get it done. I have seen a greater degree of, and again, just individuals really wanting to be into the journey, into the work.
Yeah, I love that. That's really just being more present about your life, being intentional about what you're wanting to achieve with your priorities, if that's physical or other, and then taking it down a notch so you're not feeling perfectionist, so that you can enjoy the journey and make that sustainable too. I think I love this, that we're tying in sustainability with regards to health and movement within our busy schedules and making it achievable and fun. I heard fun in there. I'm sure it's fun.
Yeah, it's finding, and what I usually say is, if you think about it this way, so if somebody is a really skilled and talented runner, let's say they have the body type that's going to be conducive to kind of endurance running and they get runner's highs and it feels great. They're going to have fun with that because they're good at it. It's a positive reinforcement. And anytime we have positive reinforcement, it's fun. Okay, so what happens a lot of times is if I have somebody who's maybe not a natural runner and maybe they're not, they don't have like the build to be able to run like, a marathon because it's just not genetically what they were determined to do. That's not fun for them. So we have to find what's fun for them. And so I think offering all these different options, and usually what I find is that many women shy away from strength training because it's not something they grew up doing. They think of strength training as like, I have to join a CrossFit gym or I have to join a gym or I need to have tons of equipment, which is just simply not true. So the women that potentially have avoided strength training, but they're built for it, once they find it, they're like, oh my gosh, this is so fun and I'm really good at it. And then they start having fun with exercise. So I think it is about finding the thing that really, like you said, is kind of fun.
Good. Love it. How can people find you, Allie?
Thank you. So pretty simple. We actually have just rebranded to the company name The Fit Collective. So it's just www.thefitcollective.com. And on the website, we have our podcast, which is currently being rebranded. So right now it's still called Life Coaching for Women Physicians, but it's being rebranded. And then on Instagram, I'm Allie Novitsky, MD. And we kind of just put some good stuff out into the world. And that's, the best way to find us.
Sounds good. If people are in that place where they haven't exercised in a while, they don't think they have time for it, they don't think 5,000 steps is possible, where would they start? What do you think is a good idea?
I think just getting the awareness of where you're at. Literally, before you do anything, it's okay, where am I at right now with my health? So even going to your doctor and getting your yearly checkup, checking your lab work, asking your body, how does my body feel right now? Asking your mind, how's my mind right now? How are my emotions? How is everything? Taking a full inventory on yourself and also with the help of your physician to kind of really get a lay of the land. That's the first step. Okay. Then it's being empowered to make your own decision on what you want to do. Because if somebody's sitting here saying, well, if you're not getting 5,000 steps, you're not improving your longevity, that's not motivating. That actually, you're going to turn the podcast off right now. Right. So it's saying, no, listen, you have complete autonomy, complete ownership, complete ability to do whatever it is that you want. But you won't know what that is unless you have awareness of where you currently are. And is that okay for you? And so I think we shy away from data. And I'd say that some data I'm okay shying away from. Like, I don't care what you weigh. I don't care what anybody weighs. But I do care about this self-inventory. I think that's the most powerful thing you can do. So I don't think you should go get a pedometer today before you've done the self-inventory.
And anything we didn't talk about that you'd like to talk about?
Oh, I love that. I just think that a lot of times what I find is that we consume a lot of information, right? We're like, okay, well, this sounds really good to me. Or yes, that sounds like something that might resonate, but you know what? Now's not the right time. Let me just put it off. I think eventually I'm going to get to it. And so I think what is really helpful and what's been really helpful for me, because I talk a lot about energy. Energy is my new way of kind of describing a lot of why we do this work. It's really about tapping into that intuition, and all of us have intuition. Intuition isn't something that only special people get. We all have it, but when we're very stressed out, right, we can't access it. And so what I'd say is one of the ways that you can start to access where you want to be and where you want to be going, if you feel like you don't know, right, you're kind of like, I need something, but I don't know what. follow your energy on what you're attracted to. And a lot of times this will be communities, or, somebody that can mentor you, but you'll find your energy drawn to something and you'll know the difference. So the energy that doesn't feel good, it feels real negative, and you're like, oh gosh, I need to unsubscribe to that. Do that, unsubscribe to that. That's going to clear the space for you to follow the energy that feels really, really good. And a lot of times for me, it's definitely communities and people. So I'd say if you don't know where to start, just look for a community and people that kind of really resonate with where you want to be or where you want to go. I just love that in terms of a mentorship protocol. And it's something that I personally do, and I found great success with that. So I just want to give people kind of a little bit of confidence. Like, if you don't know what you need, but you know you need something, use that energy piece to kind of pull you into the direction that would benefit you right now.
I love that. Thank you. All right. Well, I think that is inspiration to get up and get going, figure out what it is that you're interested in doing to create a sustainable health for yourself. Thank you, Ali, so much for some ideas on where to get started and how to make this sustainable in our day. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much. And I appreciate you too.
Thank you for being part of the Sustainable Clinical Medicine podcast. If you'd like to learn more or join us to help you get home with today's work done, go to chartingcoach.ca. There you'll find all the information on the premier Lifetime Access Charting Champions program that is helping physicians get home with today's work done, with all the proven tools, support, and community you need to create time for your life outside of medicine. We would love to see you there. Until next time, thanks for listening.